I wanted to introduce you to my next guest. Beyond being a great guy, Nick Marx is an independent policy advisor, speaker, statistician, and author. He's best known for his work on the Happy Planet Index as a fellow of the New Economics Foundation in London. I watched his epic TED Talk, which is now pushing 3 million views, years before I interviewed him for the first time. This is his second appearance on Xponential, and we dive into some things I was curious about and didn't get to answer in our first interview. This is a great conversation about the value of discovering how your natural inclinations, even the ones that you don't seem to see how they go together, are actually the path to unique brand recognition. We talk about how he came up with the Happy Planet Index by combining his talent as a statistician with a deep care for the human condition. I think this is a must-watch for anyone who feels like they don't quite fit into a box. It's proof that trusting those contradictions in yourself can be the very key to your unique contribution to the world. It's about reconciling what doesn't quite go together into something that makes everything come alive. Enjoy.
Happy employees are twice as valuable as okay employees.
Really? Wow.
They're twice as valuable.
How do you integrate parts of you that don't seem to relate to each other in any practical way? And you did something fascinating, right?
You know, within a few years, we were advising the Tony Blair government and then the David Cameron government on how to measure well-being. I rather frivolously said, I think I should become a Buddhist, and he went, "You've already got the body, Dad."
Yeah, I loved that TED Talk. That was what got my attention. It stuck with me for actually years, which is fascinating, right? Before we even connected.
I have a dream that we can stop thinking that the future will be a nightmare.
And the idea was so appealing to me that I ran home. I mean, I don't ever run. I ran home to my laptop to try and figure out. And by lunchtime, I got my first draft of it.
You were creative because you could integrate things that are on the surface, don't fit into a box. That's courageous. When you allow yourself to integrate this way, the way you did, opportunities actually show up.
I think I was exceptionally naive about setting up a business. I am not a natural businessman. You need to act in your zone of genius. And I thought, I feel a long way from my zone of genius.
Are there any maybe like top 2-3 investments a CEO or a board can make when it comes to, okay, these are the 2-3 things that move the needle when it comes to happiness for teams?
So happiness at work is very...
Nick, thank you so much for coming back, man. It's been a few years.
Great. It's great to be back here again and to re-meet you, yeah.
So Nick, it's the cool thing for those of you who didn't watch my first interview with Nick, probably a couple of years ago, maybe more, is that the backstory is that I saw you on a TED Talk, and this was a few years before that, yeah. And I always remember that TED Talk for the longest time, and then eventually when I was doing my podcast and the topics sort of aligned, I reached out, or somebody in my team reached out. It was really great connecting with you, and at the time, we were talking about happiness. Those are the core themes, right? Yeah. Which is your specialty. You're a statistician, yeah. So you quantify feelings, which is fascinating, I think. And you quantify feelings on a macro level, on the level of countries, all the way down to companies and teams. And you developed a business that helps companies make happier teams make better companies, all of those things. And then it's really cool that we're reconnecting now, because there's another shift that happened in your both personal journey and your professional life, is that you start a new effort professionally, a new season, and you released a new book, right? And the book's title is Happiness is Serious Business, which is awesome, I think. So can we maybe start with this? Can we maybe start with, how do you end up being the statistician of happiness? Like, that's not something that people just kind of go from high school going, this is who I want to be, right? How do you find the place, like a journey like this?
So look, at school, if we go right back to there, I was the really annoying guy that was top of math without trying. You know, wow. I just could consider,
people like you really annoyed me.
Yes.
I'm a humanities person, yeah. And I would just struggle, and it would torture me, and some people just effortlessly would do this, and it would truly annoy me.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to describe. It's like they would try and get me to sit with someone and explain something, and I would go, "This can't you see?" And I started to realize that it wasn't obvious how things. It was. And I think that's just a pattern recognition. It's just a certain, and it's a very specialized type of intelligence. But I
Yeah,
just
I agree.
genetically have
I
that,
agree.
you know.
I agree.
And so I ended up at Cambridge University reading mathematics without really making a decision, because my school loved people going to top universities. So, there you are, you're top, you go there. And no one really asked me if I would like to study mathematics. They just sent me pretty much. I mean, and of course I wanted to go. It's status, it's everything.
Yeah, Cambridge, of course.
Yeah. But I got there and I didn't like mathematics at university. It got very
Really?
pure. And what I discovered was that I like solving problems with
Ah,
and a real human scale, normal problems. And so I started to switch into sort of basically systems thinking, how you model, create simulation models. This is before big computing. We did have computers, but it's before big computing. I'm quite old. I'm 60 now. So, it's quite a long time ago. And so I started switching into that. And then, I followed that train for a bit after university. I did a master's and then worked as a management consultant, like you do, because you're in top stream. And then I did something really left field. And actually this kind of links us because you were a pastor. I trained as a therapist. And it's because my mother was a family therapist. And I
that's
kind of
amazing.
liked her way of being.
Yeah.
And actually, to be credit to my dad was a business guy. He was really into personal development, way ahead of people in business. He would run, training weekends like people do now. But this was in the 70s, he was doing this. So he was quite ahead. And I think it's what he loved about the business, because his father had set up the business. He didn't really have much choice about going to the business. So he quirked it towards himself. So I trained as a therapist, and I had these parallel lives. I didn't really think how to integrate them. In the back of my mind I was, but I was doing work on new economics, environmental economics. That was an interest to me, quality of life. And then in the year 2001, I just sort of got offered a role at a think tank, which was, it wasn't even really a role. It was an idea, which was that well-being, the word well-being was coming into public policy. And the think tank wanted to do some work on it. And I said, well, look, I'm a statistician. If you ask me, I'll try and measure it. We didn't know how to measure it. And so that's how it started. And so that's nearly 25 years ago. And I just started a project, got some funding. We had a little bit of funding, got some funding. And I volunteered for a year or two. And then I built a team. And then, within a few years, because we hit a really wave in UK policy. And we were advising the Tony Blair government and then the David Cameron government on how to measure well-being. And I'd gone into academia, to academic conferences, and learnt from people who were measuring quality of life. I kind of thought they'd more agree with each other than they actually did. And so I had to start applying our own models, and did lots of work with European statistics agencies and whatever, and developed this whole work on how you measured well-being. And then 2010, I did my TED talk on the Happy Planet Index, which we'd created, which is
I loved that TED talk.
Yeah,
that was what got my attention. It stuck with me for actually years, which is fascinating, right? Before we even connected.
I rewatched it the other day, and I'm quite proud of young Nick.
It's
it's
good for you. Good for you. That's awesome.
It was quite stressful because
I can imagine.
We were a little think tank. We didn't have big budgets,
right?
And suddenly I've got a TED talk, so I certainly obsessed about it for 3 months before.
Okay, so let me pause you there for a second, because this even this part of the narrative is fascinating to me, and I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
How do you use the word integrate? I think that's a key pillar concept that more people should be aware of. How do you integrate parts of you that don't seem to relate to each other in any practical way? And you did something fascinating, right? You found in yourself the ability to see something that I think maybe it's more nature, right? The math piece.
Mm-hmm.
And then also adds the layers in your life that are always origin story layers. And that's when I work with clients, I ask them to pay attention to those, because usually they're too familiar. They seem unrelated. They're not integrated, and they're super valuable. But you paid attention to your dad, who was into personal development, who was into business, to your mom, who was a therapist. And you felt the value of that, and somehow you found your way into integrating the math and the
Yeah.
therapy and the personal growth.
Yeah, and also the context of sustainability and environmental issues.
Also, mhm.
I was quite, not radical, but I wanted to change the world when I was young, and I have
Yeah.
given up on that now. But
Don't say that. Don't say that. That's not true.
no, I'm still contributing, but my grandiosity is slightly more checked than when
Okay.
I was
Okay.
young. But so I think this is kind of where our work was really very groundbreaking at the New Economics Foundation. We put well-being in the context of, yes, public policy, but also within sustainability agenda. And I think that's kind of, that's what the Happy Planet Index, the planet part of it, was this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that really added a lot of weight to it. And so I think I was trying to, no, I definitely was. It just feels a bit whatever to say it, but I was wanting to be in service to something bigger than myself. And
you were practical. Okay, so this is for my audience to pay attention to.
Yeah.
You were creative because you could integrate things that are on the surface, don't fit into a box. That's courageous. You're radical in the sense that you cared about people. You wanted to make a difference. You don't want to just think about formulas. You wanted that to matter in some specific way, right? And because you did those things, and I think that's really valuable for people to know, when you allow yourself to integrate this way, the way you did, opportunities actually show up. Now, you may not recognize them, you might not take them in the moment, but that story of there was a think tank and they didn't have a role, but they had an idea. That is that's a story that you can really attach meaning to, because that story works for everybody who does what you did. It really does.
Yeah, it definitely, and it's sort of, I think it felt like a moment in real time. I mean, I can remember the director. He was called Ed Mayo, and he said, "The word well-being is coming, and we need to." His brief was, "We need to drive some meaning under the word well-being." That's what he said.
Fantastic.
And he goes, "Nick, because you do, because I was working with this think tank I did a master's on change, personal, group, and organizational change. So this is in my 30s, and it was a sort of interest masters, part-time, 3 years, one weekend in 4, and so it was a sort of something I did as a professional development. And I was working with this think tank with a team that was a little dysfunctional about how this team finished. And Ed went to me, "Well, you do this sort of organizational change, but you've got all these statistical projects,
Yeah.
So he saw it. He saw it in me. And it's like, I'm always grateful to Ed for that, because I'm not sure I quite saw it in myself." And he went, "Try." And I went, "I'll try," and it was literally a sort of 1 day a week volunteer job for about a year.
Right.
And then projects started to come and it became full time. Yeah.
That's those are such great insights for anybody. Anybody. Okay, so let's move on. So you have this massive TED Talk. It's very, very popular, clearly. Yeah. And of course, that was also an opportunity that it's this domino effect, right? You start working, it was as a volunteer, then was a thing, there's a TED Talk.
Yeah.
The TED Talk was exactly when the wave of TED Talks were hitting hard. Like there was, I don't know how long it was, but the TED Talks were like, if you had a TED Talk, you essentially went through the next level of professional development at the time, right? It was just one of those opportunities. How did you, like, if you take that opportunity, tell me how that happened, right? So think about this. Think about it this way. This is a massive platform. Everybody loves, it's like the heyday of TED Talks. You know that you have 18 minutes to present an idea and not a minute more.
Yeah.
And you know that it may change your life. I don't know if you had this, I'm just imagining, right?
Yeah.
How do you handle it? How do you handle the opportunity?
I'm certainly obsessed about it. I mean, I was already a good public speaker and a good speaker, but I got coaching for the first time, and I really worked on the narrative arc of the 18 minutes. And my partner at the time wasn't English, and she was really reminding me that English is a second language for a lot of people. So to slow down, because
that's
if
good.
I get excited, I go faster.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to slow down now. And my voice goes higher, I notice. I get excited.
Really?
Yeah. So it's like, I mean, particularly now I'm 60, I should lower my voice. And I'm trying to think about that more. But it was, and I was still rebellious, not rebellious, but I mean, wanting to change the world. So I was also connected to this think tank that I absolutely loved New Economics Foundation. So it was founded in the honor of Fritz Schumacher, who wrote Small is Beautiful in the 70s. And its tagline was economics as if people and planet mattered. So this was a real, so cool. Much more than just a job for me. This was a real passion project. And I really wanted to give to NEF. And so I very much focused on really doing the best for me and my team, representing our work. And that's why when I looked at it again, I thought, I do like that. I wasn't really thinking about it very personally. I thought more about how can I do the best I can do. And I didn't think about it in a professional development way. I should have done probably, but I didn't. I just thought about how can I, my loyalty is to the ideas and to presenting the ideas. And so, yeah, I did. I was aware it was a big thing, and it felt huge on the day, and it did certainly change. It did elevate what we did. I think the real change in my life was joining the think tank. That is the moment, probably.
Of course, yeah.
Which did. So
but I think it's really more visibility. It revealed what you were doing in the think tank to a broader audience, correct?
And it's 9-10 years later, 9 years after that. It takes time to come through. And yeah, it was, and then I think I did a lot of talks afterwards, but I kind of got to a stage where people would pay me quite a lot for talks, and that was fine. But I didn't want to just keep saying the same thing. I wanted to start some new work. So after 2 or 3 years, 1 year, I think I did do 50 trips. And
yes, that makes sense.
And that was fine. I'd quite enjoyed it for a while, but then I just wanted to get back to work again. It felt like there's only so many times you can give the same talk when you're not really doing new work.
Yeah.
And so then I sort of decided it sort of slightly tailed off anyway. And I wasn't using speaking agencies and really trying to drive my speaking. So I just started to think, what did I want to do next? And we got to a stage in the UK policy arena where well-being was really quite established. David Cameron has set up a national measurement thing since before Brexit. And I thought, well, I've achieved the policy goals. That's a decade of work. So talking about stages of life, I kind of thought, maybe change. And so then...
But you already were advising Tony Blair, government, David Cameron, and others, correct? I think you were working with other countries when it comes to sort of happiness index stuff.
Yeah, my team were working with the European Statistics Agency, Eurostat. Mm-hmm. We were working, with OECD, not necessarily advising them. I personally went out to Bhutan a few times, and I would say advise, but that would mean they took my advice. They never really, I wasn't really very happy with how they decided to measure gross national happiness in the end. Mm-hmm. But I did enjoy my time interacting with them and learned a lot about.
I remember you telling me that you were thinking about becoming a Buddhist, and I think your son or your daughter said, "Well, you have the body for it already," or something like that. I thought that was hilarious.
It's so true. I bought my youngest. He must have been about 8 at the time. He's now 24 or something. I bought him a Buddha back from Bhutan, and then I came back once, and actually my marriage was splitting up, so it was like a time that was the thing. And I said, I rather frivolously said, I think I should become a Buddhist. And he went, "You've already got the body, Dad." And
that was good.
I think I've never had quite the patience or discipline to really commit to a spiritual practice. But if I was, it would be Buddhism, I think.
So let me ask you this. You said, and actually I have sort of parallel stories of interacting with governments. I was in Eastern Europe for a while, and they used my song to sort of be the anthem for Boris Yeltsin's election campaign.
Oh, wow.
This was in my previous life when I was a pop artist, right?
Yeah.
And I sort of had that same, I feel like I have that same at the time, we're changing the world. We're helping
Yeah.
this country to transition or defend democracy against sort of communists who are coming back, etc. And then eventually I realized that, yeah, the governments really don't do lasting things. Very rarely they do. And if you help a government, they'll probably won't pay attention. And I wasn't even helping in any shape or form with policy, but I was sort of participating in the journey a little bit, right? But I had that same sensation of, okay, that was underwhelming, So do you can you tell me, did you have any significant interactions with sort of the kings of this world, right? Tony Blair, their team, in a way that you feel like, oh, that was notable. What I said, they said, what they wanted, what we advised, and just any takeaways from that.
Yeah, so my team was operating at about 2 levels below minister level.
Mhm.
So we were advising senior civil servants.
Okay.
And I think the moment was when I realized that the woman, she was called Jill Matheson, who is the chief statistician in the UK. That's the head of the statistics agency. They're called the chief statistician. She recognized, she knew I was at a conference, and I went up to talk to her. Oh yeah, I really like your work, Nick. And this is the chief
Wow.
statistician in the UK.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, she wasn't being anything. She was just saying she really liked it, and she really liked the way that we were making it more popular, that we were reaching out to a wider audience. Statistics is quite dry. I mean,
Yeah.
the Happy Planet Index is really, my TED Talk is really about how governments should have an alternative to GDP, which is quite a niche topic.
It is, yeah. But it stuck with me. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Maybe part of it has to do with that I have a master's in economics, and maybe
Yeah.
I geek out on that. But it stuck with me. It was extraordinary.
And it's used in economics degrees and geography, schoolwork, and so because it's a simple idea, we say that happiness shouldn't cost the earth. How do you measure that? Well, how
great.
happy and how long do people live? How much resources do they use? It's very simplicity, and there's a long walk to simplicity. You will know this.
Yeah.
If you can be simple and simplistic, but if you want to be simple and have depth to what you're doing, it takes. You have to go right past the complexity.
It's very hard.
And so I think what we managed to do with the Happy Planet Index, which was, it's a weird thing when you come up with an idea, a creative idea. I remember literally where I was walking when I had the idea. Because
tell me about that. Tell me about that. Because those moments, I love studying those moments. Okay, what's the context here? What was happening?
It's 2005. I'm walking my dog, and I am doing a project at New Economics Foundation on environmental well-being. And I put a proposal together because I wanted to do a survey about people's environmental values, their happiness, and to look at all the connections between them. And the survey's £25,000, £30,000. And the funders said no. And the media team just said, oh, can you find some statistical hook for this story? And I was going to a lot of conferences on how you measure quality of life. And there's a beautiful measure called Happy Life Years, which is basically happiness adjusted life expectancy. So it's quality and quantity of life. And it was developed by this professor in the Netherlands called Ruud Veenhoven. And he'd been giving a talk the year before, and he'd gone, life's never been so good. Because if you go right back to, pre-industrial times, or even you go back to hunter-gatherers, people didn't live very long. We don't know about hunter-gatherers. They might have been quite happy, but their lives were short. And then we go through industrial periods and people's lives got longer, but that was quite difficult. And then over the last 100 years, people have lived much longer and they got much happier. It's the best time in human history. And I turned to my friend, a great Norwegian psychologist called Jorve Tisserot, and I said to him, yeah, but we're ruining the planet as we go there, because that was my thing. And that was a little thought a year before. And then when Ruth, our media director, had asked me for this thing, I thought, well, I could divide Happy Life Years by environmental footprint. And the idea was so appealing to me that I ran home. I don't ever run. I ran home to my laptop to try and figure out. And by lunchtime, I got my first draft of it. It was fairly rudimentary, but I got my first draft. And the thing that really interested me was Latin America did well. And I thought that's interesting because that turns a whole new measure of progress, thinking about medium development countries. Really, maybe they're more efficient at creating quality of life. Maybe we are undeveloping, we've overdeveloped, and of course there's undeveloped countries which are not coming through at all. And so it created an interesting tension, and I think it's always interesting statistically to capture attention between two things, and rather than just one variable that you maximize, you've got two that you're trading off on. So that's where the idea came from, and that was the big breakthrough idea for us, really. Yeah,
that's why I go on walks every single day.
Yeah,
I mean, without fault, sort of breakthrough, hooky, attention grabbing, sort of formative, right? Like ideas, frameworks. I think they usually come when we're not trying.
I think that's creativity altogether.
Yeah.
In fact, there's a wonderful book called The Progress Principle by Professor Teresa Ombeli. I can't remember what university she's out of actually, but she looks at creativity, and has a diary study where she's following 250 people for 6 months, and they're filling out a diary every day. They're at work, and she's looking for everyday creativity, and she's looking the link between, what did she call it? She called it work mood or something, but basically happiness at work. And maybe she called it inner world of work. Anyway, something she called it. But she's measuring their day-to-day happiness and their creativity because she's looking at their diaries. And what she found out was that we know that happiness and creativity are linked, but she found out that happiness on day one predicted creativity on day two. But creativity on day one didn't predict happiness on day two. But happiness predicted creativity.
Yeah.
And what she said was really interesting was that, and in fact, it also predicted 2 days later, was she said, effectively, if we're stressed, we have a nightmare, our brain is processing it through the night. And if we're happy, we're able to process things very functionally. And it's why we often wake up with a fresh idea, because our brain has been working through it at night. And the more settled we are, the more content we are, the more positive we feel, the better the brain can work through that stuff. So creativity follows happiness, which is just...
I love that. What's the name of the book again?
It's called The Progress Principle.
Okay. I will definitely get the book, because this is quite literally the very first step in my coaching program. Is I basically say, look, you can't really create a new future or imagine it if you're in survival mode. You have to be happy to be able to create. So I'll teach you in a week how to go from stressed, anxious, preoccupied, worried to happy, creative, peaceful.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you can't imagine what the future might look like.
It's totally true. And I do talk about this in my book, not to plug it too much, but I've got a book about how I think we think that creativity is about sort of tortured geniuses sometimes. And
and it's not
everyday
true.
creativity is exactly the opposite.
Yeah, I agree.
I
totally agree.
And it's also the calmer positive emotion. So in psychology, we talk about positive and negative emotions, and negative emotions are not dysfunctional. They're highly functional. They're helping us deal with threats. So they're anger and fear, sadness. They're about the fight and flight mechanism. Sadness is about processing loss. They're dealing with threats or losses. Whereas the positive emotions are mainly about creating and seizing opportunities, but they're also building stability. And so if I ask people, I started to notice this 15 years ago. If I ask people in workshops, what does happiness mean to you? Some people would say contentment, and some would say enthusiasm. Well, they're quite different.
Yeah, I agree.
And actually, there's different types of positive emotions, and I call them, and basically they're around. Some are helping us maintain stability, and some about help us driving change. So I call them sustaining and striving. But, things like enthusiasm, interest, courage, actually in that moment of enthusiasm, we're not very creative because we've got an idea and we're driving it. Whereas when we're content and calm and connected, we're much more creative. So it's some types, and you need that. It's like psychological safety, some people would call it. You need this baseline of sort of security, but you don't want it for security's sake. You want it to leap, to rise. In the end, lovely to have stability, but what you can do, and
absolutely.
So that's
great.
where that's where the connection comes from, and I think that's why psychology and so interesting, because it's just
it's fascinating. It's fascinating that you combine those two things in a unique way. I find it fantastic. So how did you mentioned that you you were a good public speaker by the time you made this sort of this TED talk. How'd you get good at it?
I mean, I was all, I don't know why I didn't frighten me. That's difficult to say why, because I know a lot of people who are good speakers or really brilliant knowledge experts who I'm not saying I'm not nervous before I go talking, but they literally feel sick and really find it hard. And and why
I'm
do
the
some
same
people
way.
want to be,
I don't get nervous. Yeah.
why do some people want to be actors, you know? And so I think, and I am extrovert and in a way, it's a difficult word to own, but charismatic. I can communicate ideas well, but this is my craft. This is my speaking is my real craft. My
Communication, absolutely.
Yeah,
it's everybody's core thing. It doesn't matter how good you are and how good your ideas are if you can't communicate them to people.
Yeah, right? And I think it's one of the reasons why the chief statistician loved what we were doing, because we were good at communicating and making it simple and interesting.
But how'd you develop the craft though? Was it high school speeches? Was it college? Like a course in college? What was it?
And I didn't do acting. I didn't do stand-up comedy. I didn't do any of that at university. I just somehow, I think it liked my math stuff. I don't know. You know, when you've got kids, presumably, have you got kids? You know,
yeah, I have 3 daughters.
I had boys, and we have a game in Britain called rugby, which is a bit like American football.
Yes, I love rugby.
Very physical, right? And you'd see these,
and also smarter than American football in a way that, because you don't have that much protection, you have to be a little bit more nuanced in avoiding being hurt.
Well, I don't know.
That's what I find.
Well, I think there's a real beauty to American football, actually, because it's all set plays. It's like, it's really aesthetically quite beautiful. It
really is, yeah. And athleticism, it's just insane athleticism.
But it's also they've worked out before what they're going to do. Of course, sometimes they have to do it on the hoof and something happens. Actually, I find that rugby's much more fluid, not stop and start. But watching an American football game highlights is very interesting. I don't like watching real time. It's really dull because of all the setting. But anyway, regardless, it's rugby. And when they were 8, 9 and they start to tackle, some boys leant into the tackle, some leant away. The rugby players were going to be the ones that leant in the tackle. Why does a boy lean into contact? My daughter did play a bit, actually, but you know, why does someone lean into that contact and want it, and why do other people get frightened of it? Ultimately, the good rugby players are the ones that just instinctively lean into it. And something with my public speaking, with my speaking in public, really, I lean into it. And again, I can't really explain it, except that I'm very passionate. I don't want to speak on anything. I'm very passionate about what I want to communicate.
I feel the same way. I've always leaned into it, performance, public stuff. I perfected it. Because I wanted to be confident, and then I was more confident than most people were. Sort of like you, right? Great professionals could be like sick to their stomachs before they do go on stage. Yeah. I was not, and yet my question, I guess, is how'd you perfect it? Because you lean into it, but there's still a craft to be mastered.
I mean, if I'm giving a keynote, I don't just have a standard one. I will always think, what's this audience? I will always rehearse it. Nearly always rehearse it. Sometimes, you're doing something, gratis or something, and you might just turn up spontaneously. But if I'm doing one, which I'm well paid for, I will craft it for that audience. And I will think, what bullet point do I want to come out here when I'm using PowerPoint? If I'm doing an after dinner talk or lunch talk or something, okay, what story do I want to start with? And I've just jotted something down. But I will always think of the narrative arc of what I'm doing. I mean, the TED Talk, I rehearsed it to death. In fact, a very funny moment in the TED Talk was, have you done the TEDx thing where you've got the counter or something and it's counting down the minutes, and you've got this 18-minute clock that's there when you get there. You've got this big audience. You've got this big red circle. I actually had a calm come over me before, because I knew I'd done everything I could do to be ready. So now I just thought, I'm ready. I mean, I can't say why that was. I just felt ready. Anyway, I knew where I needed to be on certain beats, and I had a presentation. So, I was a little controlled about where it was. But I finished in 17 minutes 20. And I thought, my first thought, everyone's clapping. And all that's going through my head is, what have I forgotten? what have I forgotten? Because I should be on 18 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
What have I forgotten? So I wasn't really enjoying the applause. I was thinking,
I dropped the ball somewhere. Yeah.
well, I didn't. I think I just went a bit faster
Yeah,
in my
that's all.
practicing
Yeah,
because I was
that's
trying to slow
fascinating.
down because, instead of speaking a second language, I don't think I went too fast, but I think I just went 2% faster, 3% faster. And that's all I can think of because I've looked back at it. There was nothing was missing. I maybe sometimes I could put extra sentences in here or there, but I just think I went a bit quicker.
That's fascinating. Okay, so now you go from advising governments and things like that, and then you start niching down onto corporate work, helping corporations with teams. Tell me about that season. How do you pivot from a personal brand standpoint, from a thought leader standpoint? Why did you do it? Was it hard to do? It's a courageous leap, right? It's you're adjacent, but it's not the same thing.
Yeah. So I was in my mid-40s and I was thinking, maybe in late 40s, I was thinking I probably got one more big shift in me. I think I was aware, as you talk about, of the seasons of my life. And policy is quite removed from people's lives. It was fun, but, it's slow moving. You're doing national statistics. We did some other work, which I really like, which is more connecting to individuals. But I want to do something a bit more connected. And we spend a lot of time at work. And it's where adults spend their lives. I mean, when governments try to reach adults around their well-being, how do they do that? They've got the health system, but that's people who are already not well. You've got the taxation system. That's not a very good influence. I mean, it's just not how you've got local services, a little bit, tiny bit, but really people's lives go on in their families and in their workplaces and in their communities. So you could do a little bit on communities, but work, we spend a lot of time. So I've started to think, oh, well, maybe, if I could get happiness messages into work, that really travels. And then the beautiful thing, statistically, I'm a statistician, is that an organization is a system you know the boundaries of. So you could measure the whole system, whereas normally I was working with samples and you're approximating and you're trying to intervene. Like even when you were doing local community work, some people lived there, some people worked there, some people sent children there, some people worked somewhere. There was all these boundaries, whereas work is kind of, it's a nice system. And you've got units of measurement, you've got individuals in it, and you've also got this wonderful win-win, which is that we know that when we feel good, we do good work. So the benefits of positivity and happiness are very proximal, very close to it, and very measurable. So statistically, it's a dream. and that's kind of the reasons why I went into it, and that's kind of what my book is about, which is that this is a no-brainer, actually. Clearly, you should look after the mood of your team. Now, that does not mean they need to be happy, clappy, away with the fairies, or whatever anyone wants to say. No, it's a serious type of happiness. It's I enjoy my work. I'm accomplishing things. I feel respected. I have good team relationships. I can shape my own work. These are serious things, and get them right, and you've got 20, 30% more productivity. You've got much more stable teams because people stay, they don't leave. And in the end, my estimates, which are carefully argued, are that happy employees are twice as valuable as okay employees.
Really? Wow.
Just ones that feel okay. They're twice as valuable.
You can quantify its effect on the bottom line, I'm assuming, right?
So that
gets people's attention.
The twice as valuable is effectively taking, so people talk a lot about the lifetime value of a customer.
Yes.
And they estimate that because they want to know how much to invest in winning a customer and when will they get their money back. Well, it's actually the same with an employee. You have to recruit them. That's an investment. What is going to be the lifetime value of this employee to you? Well, a happy employee is always 10 to 20% more productive. They get to value much quicker because they pick up the job much quicker. So they've got much more time and they stay longer. They stay 2 to 3 years longer. So you do the math and it's 2.2 times is the precise figure. But I mean, there's a lot of estimation. So I just say twice as, but I think people don't understand how big a factor it is.
That's extraordinary. Are there any maybe like top 2-3 investments a CEO or a board can make when it comes to, okay, these are the 2-3 things that move the needle when it comes to happiness for teams?
So happiness at work is very, I've used the word for proximal. It's very team related because that's who you're spending all of your time with. And so that's where the positivity resonance is. That's where if you've got a team leader who gets you down, everybody comes down. So it's very much in the team. And so senior leaders should understand that team leaders should be given time budgets to build their team. They don't need financial budgets, but every week they should be talking with their team. How was last week? How did you feel? What's gone well? Too much we just go to what's the challenge. What went well last week? Because that's where the strengths are. That's where the good stuff is. What went well? How, what did you enjoy doing? How, what did you achieve? Get that, because that's what you want to build on.
Yeah.
And then when, in a team meeting, literally in a team meeting, do with the good stuff first. Who do you want to thank for supporting you? Get appreciation going in your team. And then once you've got that, okay, what's holding you back? What's frustrating you? But don't go to that first. Do the good stuff first, because humans, we want to be appreciated. That isn't a weakness. That's not like, something. No, that's just who we are.
It's a core need. Yeah.
And so make sure you're looking. And what do team leaders get? They just get bullied from the center, from the top, about what's your performance, what your figures, and so they stress, and so they stress that into their teams,
and they shut down, they shrink, and they don't create. Right? Yeah. We talked about being happy then creative, not the other way around.
Yes,
and that happens all the time. Yeah,
and team leaders are typically promoted into role for technical skills rather than people skills. That is a mistake.
That's a mistake.
You should have people in managerial roles, supervisory roles, leadership roles who've got good people skills. And some of the most brilliant technical people don't have good people skills. So you've got two choices. You train them in it and you'd really help them, or give them a technical career path where they can be brilliant and they can mentor people, particularly about their technical stuff, but don't get them to manage their whole careers. So find, alternative career paths. So my biggest thing to senior leaders would be to really support team leaders to be better people leaders. These are the essential things around happiness.
That's fantastic, and more people should pay attention to that. And I've personally am like thinking of a list of friends or clients who came just exhausted, depleted from an unhappy team environment, basically.
Yeah,
it's pretty rampant, actually.
It is, and there's the old adage that you join an organization, you leave a manager, and that's sort of trying to delegate the blame to the manager. Well, actually, that is a systemic failure of the organization to recruit and appoint good and support and train good people leaders. That's an organizational failure.
That is a great insight. So from a standpoint of a thought leader who had a business, how did that go? And I know that you're shifting again. I would love to get to that as well. How did you go from sort of a consultant, there's a think tank situation, you do this high level work, to developing a business model, implementing it for you personally? I'm just curious about how do you shift, because I think people choose, like they either inherit or come up with some sort of playbook, and then they just hold on to the playbook even when their values change and the situation changes. They just keep doing the same thing, even though they're increasingly unhappy. And you seem to be fairly good at shifting into new things. So how did you make that transition from maybe high-level consulting, happiness index, think tank, to corporate consulting, business, that sort of thing?
I had a hugely commercial idea, which I think I was as excited about as Happy Planet Index. And I, was just as critical about how organizations measure employee experience as governments measured population well-being. I think I was exceptionally naive about setting up a business.
Okay.
I am not a natural businessman because I'm in the ideas. I'm not in that thing where you're sort of driving.
That's precisely why I'm asking you that.
Yeah, and I think, my business, has been moderately successful. It hasn't done what we hoped and scaled. And that's kind of the reason I decided, okay, look, I need to step out of my business. I need to write a book. I need to capture it because I still absolutely love the idea behind the business, which is I think that we need to think about happy teams. And I think I need to find a new way that's more Nick about communicating it. So, we were talking before we came on air that I'm no longer involved in the day-to-day business, and I still am chief statistician. We call me that because I still design the statistics, I design the algorithms, I design the reporting. But I want to go and do what I actually really love, which is working with people. So I'm now just concentrating on doing masterclasses and keynotes. I'm about to start doing video more on social media because, I've got big hair. I look kind of funny, and I've got something serious.
You're recognizable. Yeah.
I think people, people spend a lot of money on glasses, don't they? So I want to do something which engages with people more. And I can engage with, I'm 60 now, and I need to move into a new phase of life. And, I can't keep trying to chase this idea of a big scalable business. I think I need to take the learnings and share them and find, and we still got the business, it's perfectly doing decently. It's just, it gets quite draining. I found it quite draining because I think I'm not in my natural habitat. I spoke with this American coach about a year and a half ago. And as a Brit, sometimes we're a little nervous about American enthusiasm. And he goes, and he goes to me, Nick, I can't do the accent. You need to act in your zone of genius. And I thought, God, I feel a long way from my zone of genius.
Oh,
and it was actually really beautiful advice. He's basically saying play to your strengths. But he called it a zone of genius. And I thought, I want to be in my zone. Who doesn't want to be in their zone of genius?
It's very attractive.
It's very attractive. And that was the start of a cascading thoughts, which has still been going on just in the last few weeks. Of my wife went away for a fortnight. She went traveling with a friend to Uzbekistan because she likes textiles and stuff. Anyway. And I had 2 weeks on my own, and this. There's layers and layers to everything, isn't there, in your life? And I deliberately did not schedule to see people. I thought I'm gonna have 10 days on my own, with the cats, and I suddenly thought, God, why do I feel still need to prove myself? As a young man, I wanted to prove myself, and I thought, maybe you should drop that, Nick. I mean, I'm simplifying it a lot, but don't keep trying to sort of prove. Just now, it's sharing. And that like you were talking about seasons, is definitely something in my age and just shifting.
So it's kind of cool the synchronicity even doing this talk together now, is that we stayed in touch a little bit, and you're on my newsletter, and you basically, I posted this newsletter about spending 17 hours of therapy in 5 days, like at this marathon that I've never done before, and sort of what I took from it and everything. And you responded to that going, man, that was really courageous that you shared about that. And I'm like, Nick, that's Nick. How are you, man? And all of that. And it sort of coincided with this idea, with my journey as well, but with yours, is that when I speak to clients and when I go on podcasts, I talk about this, the inevitability of seasons, right? Yes. Just like the fall will absolutely stop being the fall and become the winter, etc. And it's like you're in the professional journey, it's you're a student of the thing, whatever craft that is, then you're a practitioner, then you're a master, you're at sort of the peak of that. And then even your values change, your desires change in that field, and you don't want to hustle as much. So in your sort of scenario, that would be like, the business is doing okay, but I don't enjoy it as much as I thought I would, or maybe not anymore, because you're transitioning into this new season. Is the sage season. I want to share. I want legacy. I want to train other people. I want to pass this on. I've been given so much. I've been so fortunate, and that slowly starts becoming more important than the previous season. Yeah. And it seems that that's exactly where you're at. You're in this in between, or transitioning into. Can you tell me a little bit about the nuance for that? Because I find so many people they have the worst time in between seasons. It's just painful,
I think writing the book has been very helpful in sort of like the TED Talk was really helpful in summarizing a decades of work that I'd done in the think tank. Writing the book, which is a very difficult process for me. I'm not a writer. I'm a statistician. I'm probably dyslexic, which has the real advantage. I use very simple words because I can't spell long ones. So I have to think quite simply. But that's an advantage. But it was a struggle writing, and so then when I'd sort of got the book and then it's in the publication process, it was like, and then you're thinking, okay, that it's not like a TED Talk writing a book. A TED Talk was there, TED's huge brand pushing it. You went from 0 to 100. Book is a really different thing. It's like it goes out there. Some people review it, but you have to work it yourself. So it's a very different thing. And you were a musician, yeah? You were a musician. So did you?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I don't know your musical past, but you created albums and toured and things.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I did quite a bit.
I think of myself as a musician touring an album now with the book.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, you create a piece of art and then you tour to promote the album. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you toured to promote the book.
Yeah, and the lucky thing about this book is it's a sort of evergreen book. It's not going to go out of fashion. It's not about one idea, one point of history. It's a book about how you build happy teams and why they're successful. And so I can speak to this for many years, but it's now I've got to move myself and okay, I'm now communicating that. So it's sort of slowly built up for me. I was 60 last year, and that's quite a big zero one when you move. 50s you can still say you're middle. I'm now in a different phase of life, and I think 60 to 75 is probably a glorious age.
It really is.
I'm healthy.
If you embrace the season, it's a glorious age.
Yeah. I'm happily married again, and Zoe and I've been together 9 years now. And, so it's a different phase of my life. And I think it is about noticing that and embracing it. And I don't know what the implications of it all are at the moment. It is different, and I have a different relationship with my business, and I think I'm going to enjoy it. I think I'll be happier.
You will. Yeah, I think so too.
I think I'll be happier than the last 10 years because it's having an idea. The think tank was absolutely glorious. I was working in a team. I had really smart PhDs with me. The piece of work has been harder because we've been trying to do something that sort of scales, and you sort of get into that whole startup thing. You should be doing this, and all these people advising you, saying you're brilliant and this and that, but then you don't quite get the marketing right. The think tank went so well unexpectedly, maybe luckily, don't know. I think this is just as good work, but it's been harder. But now, what I love doing, what better than to sit down with 100 leaders and talk about their experience of work and their stresses and their team stresses. I feel I'm doing something useful to people, that's very human. So I the start of this work I'm really enjoying. Yeah,
it's very exciting. I think personally that you are brilliant. You're intuitive about pivoting, and you will really, really enjoy it, especially if you build beyond sort of just this one-to-many speeches, book, even masterclasses, some sort of program that is more boutique and high impact. With people where you can actually measure the progress of very specific people in very specific ways. I think that's going to really be incredibly fulfilling for you.
Yeah, I'm starting to work with a couple of organizations which are quite large actually, but how do we roll out a training, and I would like to do that, and I find nothing more rewarding than, it's lovely now that pandemic is over and we're back face to face, and okay, we're doing this but it's lovely being in the same room as people. It's the difference between watching a concert online or being there live in the field. It's a totally different experience, and that's what I want to do. And I don't want to kill myself doing that. I want to do it in a way that allows me to age. I look at myself. I'm so lucky. I've got lots of friends who are retiring at 60 and they're exhausted, we've got one dear friend from university who was a real rebel at university, used to go on marches, and he's then worked and the civil service, and he's back on marches again. It's
He
fantastic.
is?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. That's
He's
great.
retired. He's
It's
retired.
great when you're energized, right?
Yeah.
I mean, in every season of life, you have to find the source of energy that
Yeah.
gets you
Yeah.
out of bed and gives you joy, that sort of thing.
And
That's
then I've got
great.
others that just seem to be playing golf and cutting grass, and I don't think they're very happy. You know,
Yeah.
they don't
Yeah.
know
Oh,
what's.
it's impossible to be happy in that mode, I don't think.
So
Yeah.
I think I feel very blessed that I have got something I'm still passionate about, and I've got something I can do as I get older, and I could, I could keep on doing this into my 80s if I'm healthy and alive, because
It's a beautiful
I'll,
thing.
I'll become more of a sort of guru wizardy long
Yeah,
head.
exactly. That's the sage. That's the definition of sage. You'll be you'll even look a little bit more like Gandalf as you age, which is fantastic. You'll
Do
be
you know?
the Gandalf of statistics.
I said my wife went to Uzbekistan for fabrics, and she's brought me back this beautiful woven coat, which is like a wizard coat. It's stars and sun and moon.
That's
It's
fantastic.
a full length thing, and I just love it. And
all you need is a staff that you
Yeah.
can bang down. You shall not pass. That's
Yes.
what you need.
I mean, I'll fully embrace that role, and I think, and how lovely if people give you permission to share what
Yeah.
you've learned. I mean, that will be, I would be a very happy old man if I get to. But of course, I've got to keep listening to the audience. That crafting is still there. There's no point me going off into a cloud and having a thunderbolt. It's about, I think, being connected to younger people, and listening. I mean, that's the big thing with training as a therapist, is listening.
Yeah, and you're good at it. What a great way. I love your story of integrating all these things. I think that's really the path to unique value and a brand. That's how brands are developed, right? Public brands, personal brands. So, okay, so this was fantastic. Thank you for doing this. I have one more question before I let you go. I know that we're, right about the 1 hour mark. If you could pick a time that was sort of a pivotal time for you, you go left and this happens, you go right and this happens. And in your younger self, right? It could be whatever, teenage years, right before the TED Talk, whatever you feel like that was it. What would you say to your younger self now from the sage stage that would help that younger self navigate life better?
I was very keen, as I said, to prove myself when I was young, and I think I would just say relax a bit. I did kind of learn that in my 30s, 40s, but keep going. I mean, I don't know why I sort of wanted to explore so much, but I think I did have that ability to try different things. But I was quite anxious. I got married too young. I wanted to sort of. I love my kids, so that's all fantastic, and I get on well with my ex. But it's like I was probably in a bit of a hurry to.
Yeah.
And now I think, I can. I mean, a good thing about having children a bit younger before you're 30 is that you have this period now where they're
yeah. And you get to enjoy a relationship with them as an adult and with another grown-ups and stuff like that. So it's great. Yeah, I have all of my kids are out, and it's so much fun. My relationship with them right now.
One of mine's getting married next weekend, so that's
wow.
Nice.
Congratulations!
That's great. So that's moving to a different phase again. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, have a happy Sage season. I'll be tracking you, of course. We'll stay in touch.
I so love this. Thank you so much for asking me. I was just reaching out to just say you were brave about your therapy. So it's really nice that we've done this as well.
Well, I just really remembered our talk, and I thought it was very valuable, and your journey is very valuable. What you do is very unique. So, thank you for coming on, Marx.
Thank you.